And welcome back to Baseball Barbacast. What a treat this is to be joined by our good friend and colleague for the week, Joon Lee, who wrote a wonderful story on our lovely website, Yahoo Sports, about the Boston Red Sox. Joon, we have, of course, reacted to this massive Rafael Devers trade earlier this week. And now we're kind of zooming even farther out. You know, we had the press conferences from Boston, from San Francisco, and those are plenty interesting on their own. But I think as we bring you on here on this podcast to talk about your story, I do think it is important that we focus on the big picture. And I think you did a good job of that. So let's start there. Before we get to any of the specifics of the story, someone who knows this franchise well, even leading up to this massive decision, how long has this really kind of been building? I guess it's a good way, both the story and just this moment in Red Sox history.
I would say that this dates back to 2019, where all of the speculation around the Mookie Betts situation started, and people were wondering, is this guy going to be here long term? Especially after Dave Dombrowski had gone out after the World Series championship and spent a ton of money, and the salary situation in the eyes of John Henry was kind of out of control. And I think when you kind of look back at where the Red Sox were at that point, they were kind of at a crossroads as Henry was really starting to grow his international ambitions for Fenway Sports Group and the need generally to have more cash on hand for him to be able to do that, to be able to support multiple major sports franchises across leagues. And so as that was happening, you know, the Mookie situation was coming to a head, and a lot of speculation was kind of getting out there about whether or not Mookie wanted to be in Boston, whether or not he wanted to be somewhere else. And I think when I remember talking to Mookie basically every single day during that 2019 season, and he always made it clear to me that like Boston was the only thing that he had known at that point, and he wanted to stay. And the Red Sox, despite him being the best homegrown prospect that they've developed since Ted Williams, had not really expressed that same sentiment. And I think that has kind of set the tone for where we are today, where this is a once-in-a-generation guy, and Mookie has gone on to kind of prove himself to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer and one of the best players of this generation. And I think from there, the fact that John Henry did not plan around the idea of keeping Mookie in Boston has led to this domino effect where they have been trying to model the Dodgers organization. They brought in Chaim Bloom to kind of do that. Chaim, for one reason or another, was not the best at executing that on the timeline that I think Boston expects for winning. And in comes Craig Breslow, and this dysfunction has kind of continued, from Mookie to Xander Bogaerts to Rafael Devers, where across chief baseball officers, there hasn't been very good communication with the best players on their team. And so this is not just a Craig Breslow issue or a Chaim Bloom issue or a Dave Dombrowski issue. This is a like John Henry, Sam Kennedy state of Red Sox ownership conversation, because there just doesn't seem to be a cohesive vision where they kind of keep flipping back and forth between, okay, we're going to press the gas pedal to try to win now. Okay, well, actually, now we're going to just play for the future. And like, you could always play for the future, and so I think the Red Sox fans, more so than being frustrated about not winning, are almost more frustrated now at this point after the Devers trade about being just like kind of, whiplashed back and forth about what the direction of this team is for the future.
Right. In that sense of confusion and disappointment, in my opinion, underscores the lack of understanding of what fans want and how fans follow a team. And obviously the winning is the be all and the end all. And if Kyle Harrison turns out to be, Gen Z Randy Johnson, then like we'll all look stupid. That's probably not going to happen, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
If they win, it's all fine. That's always the case. I want to hop back to something you said about John Henry and his global ambitions, because I think So he owns Liverpool is the big one. And I think it is easy to look at Liverpool spending 150 million pounds on a winger or whatever, and saying, well, you got to open that money up somewhere in the books. In your understanding, how interconnected are the various components of the John Henry Fenway Sports Group global sports empire from a financial standpoint?
I think the perception of it in the public is not entirely correct, because people think that like they traded Devers to sign Florian Wirtz. And I say this as both a Red Sox fan, as a Liverpool fan. It's been a very weird confluence of emotions the last few days around the moves Fenway Sports Group are making. I think that this is more reflective of how John Henry is very focused on the mega macro of where sports is right now. I mean, I actually wrote a column in the New York Times about this, about how sports is kind of getting paywalled and fractured for the fan experience. And, you know, I think that he's actually done a very good job of putting Fenway Sports Group in a place where they don't need to take a huge lump sum of private equity money, because that's where the Boston Celtics are. They just sold for $6.1 billion. And initially the sale was majority financed by a private equity firm called Sixth Street. And Fenway Sports Group is not in that place. And I think that that's something that Red Sox fans probably don't appreciate right now, but will probably appreciate more 5 to 10 years down the line. That being said, you know, the difference in how Liverpool is run versus how how the Red Sox are run, is drastically different at the current moment, because Michael Gordon is the guy who runs Liverpool. And, Jurgen Klopp was a guy that he hired. Liverpool had great success under Jurgen Klopp. They brought in Arne Slot from the Netherlands. He came in, they won a Premier League immediately. You know, they've, I think as a result, feel the momentum of the Premier League in the United States, which according to a poll from Seton Hall, for, basically guys our age, sports fans under the age of 35, the EPL and Major League Baseball are basically neck and neck in popularity. There's a big generation gap between us and like older people. But for people our age, it's basically neck and neck right now, which is kind of crazy given where soccer was in terms of popularity when we were growing up. Liverpool is an extremely well-run organization for the most part. If I'm not a Mo Salah fan and I'm thinking about Mo Salah as like a business asset, the way that they handled that negotiation, they probably got him for the best deal possible. It's kind of similar to how the Red Sox handled David Ortiz throughout the course of his entire career, where I think they almost exploited his loyalty to the franchise. Now, on the flip side, Sam Kennedy is the person who runs the Boston Red Sox. And we have seen him put out this kind of salesman pitch. And I like Sam interpersonally. He is a very, very nice guy. He's also a Brookline native. I'm from Brookline, Massachusetts. I've known him dating back to when I was in college. Like he gave me an interview for my podcast when I think I was a sophomore in college. Like Sam is a very, very nice guy. That being said, I think he's completely bungled communication with the franchise, with the fan base for going on 5-6 years now, where he's almost unable to kind of be frank with people and is always trying to put a positive spin on it. And as a result, like fans, especially in Boston, they're smart. They smell through the BS. They smell through the spin. And, I think we've seen this kind of whiplash in priorities for the organization where, they let go of Heim because he wasn't building a quote unquote sustainable, efficient organization fast enough. They bring in Breslow, Devers is signed to this extension, Alex Cora pushes the team to, sign Bregman this season, to try to push for, a playoff spot. If you watch the Red Sox Netflix documentary, in the last episode, Alex Cora says, he says that I'm really excited to compete for something bigger than a wild card next season. That's kind of shows you the motivation behind why he was trying to sign. He pushed the team to sign Alex Bregman. When you kind of put all those things together, and then you see the Rafael Devers trade, that by itself kind of illustrates like, oh, these groups are not on the same page in the first place. And so this whiplash is just throwing everyone for a spin. And obviously winning solves everything, but this is a bigger macro issue than just one season.